During a tense family dinner, my arrogant sister-in-law suddenly jumped up and yelled, "You stole my wallet, you dirty thief!" I told her she was wrong, but she smirked, reached into the bag beside me, and pulled out her wallet like she just won. "See? I knew it was you," she mocked. Everyone at the table stared at me in disbelief, but I couldn't stop laughing. My sister-in-law thought she had finally won. She stood there pointing at me, screaming that I was a thief with my entire family watching. But what she didn't realize, I was already one step ahead, and the truth was about to hit her like a freight train. Let me tell you, when the truth finally exploded in that room, the look on everyone's faces was absolutely priceless. And honestly, I saw it all coming. Every single bit of it. To really get what happened that night, you need to know about Vanessa. The moment my brother Eric brought her into our lives 6 years ago, she immediately crowned herself the queen bee. She comes from serious money. Her dad owns a chain of luxury car dealerships, and she never lets you forget it. In the beginning I tried. I really did. I just wanted my brother to be happy. So I invited her to lunch, suggested shopping trips, even offered to help plan their wedding. But every single time, Vanessa found a way to subtly put me down. She'd comment on my simple apartment, ask if my clothes were from a discount store, or suggest my career as a graphic designer was cute, but not really important like her job and her dad's business. Ouch. But the absolute worst moments always hit at family gatherings. Like 3 Christmases ago, she accidentally spilled red wine all over a dress I had spent weeks designing and making myself. Or last Thanksgiving, she loudly pointed out how brave it was of me to come to dinner alone again when everyone else had partners. And at my niece Lucy's baptism, she told extended family my gift was thoughtful, considering what you can afford. I swallowed my pride, plastered on a fake smile, all to keep the peace. Not for her, never for her. But for Eric, who seemed totally blind to his wife's behavior, and for my sweet niece Lucy. Lucy, who's still innocent and loving, and the thought of causing drama that might hurt her kept me quiet for years. My parents, David and Marie, now in their late 60s, are classic peacekeepers. They raised us to believe forgiveness is strength and family bonds are sacred. When Vanessa's behavior became too much to ignore, they gently changed the subject or find ways to separate us. My older brother, Eric, was always caught in the middle. We were so close growing up. He protected me, taught me to ride a bike, was my confidant. But after Vanessa, he changed. He became distant, canceling our monthly sibling dinners, making excuses. When I tried to gently bring up Vanessa's constant digs, he'd get defensive. "She just has a different communication style, Gabs," he'd say. "You need to try harder to understand her." My younger sister, Julia, thank goodness, was my only true ally. 3 years younger, Julia's always been the family rebel, speaking her mind. She saw through Vanessa instantly and had no problem calling out her crap. That, of course, made her Vanessa's second favorite target. "You know what your problem is?" Julia told me once. "You still care what that witch thinks. Stop giving her the power." Easier said than done when every family event felt like a psychological battleground. The lead up to that infamous dinner began 3 months earlier. My parents announced their 40th wedding anniversary. A massive milestone. I immediately volunteered to organize a dinner at Salvatore's, that upscale Italian place where they had their first date. I poured weeks into planning, custom menu, a playlist of their meaningful songs, inviting their oldest friends, a slideshow of family photos, beautiful custom invitations. And naturally, Vanessa had to insert herself. First, she called the restaurant behind my back to change the reservation time, claiming it was more convenient. Then she contacted guests to suggest a different dress code. She even ordered an entirely different cake than the one I'd carefully chosen based on my parents' favorite flavors, declaring her choice more sophisticated. When I confronted her, she played innocent. "Oh, I thought we were planning this together," she said with wide eyes. "Eric told me you probably needed help, since you have so little experience with this kind of upscale event." Eric denied saying it, but refused to ask Vanessa to back off. So, I adjusted, I compromised, and I kept my focus on making that night special for my parents. By the day of the dinner, I was utterly exhausted from navigating Vanessa's interference, but determined not to let her ruin it. Salvatore's, nestled in Chicago's Little Italy, was perfect. Giovanni, the owner, whose father served my parents on their first date, helped me reserve their most romantic corner table. The private dining room glowed with soft amber light, red and white roses on each table, my mom's favorites. The air smelled of garlic, fresh bread, and tomato sauce. I arrived 2 hours early, meticulously placing framed photos of my parents throughout their marriage on a special memory table, along with the hand-illustrated family tree I'd spent months creating. By 7 o'clock, guests started arriving. My parents walked in to applause, my mom stunning in navy, my dad beaming in his retailored suit. The sheer joy on their faces made all the stress worth it. Until Vanessa arrived. She and Eric were 15 minutes late. I later heard because she insisted on changing outfits 3 times. She swept in wearing a red designer dress that was frankly too formal, diamonds glittering everywhere. Lucy trailed behind in a miniature version of her mom's outfit, tugging at the tight collar, looking uncomfortable. "So sorry we're late," Vanessa announced loudly, air-kissing my mom. Traffic was dreadful, and I simply had to make sure we looked appropriate. Some of us understand the importance of presentation at significant events. Her eyes flickered to my simple black cocktail dress, which I had deliberately chosen not to upstage my mother. I saw my mom's subtle frown, but she, true to form, just thanked Vanessa and complimented Lucy. My seating arrangement had been carefully planned. Parents at the center, flanked by their oldest friends. Eric, Vanessa, and Lucy at one end, Julia and I at the other. This was designed to keep Vanessa and me at a safe distance. But Vanessa had other plans. As everyone moved to their seats, she loudly declared, "Oh, there must be a mistake. As the eldest son's wife, I should be seated next to Marie. Families should be closest on such an important occasion, don't you think?" Before I could react, she moved place cards, displacing Helen, my mom's best friend who'd flown in from Arizona. Chaos erupted. Awkward shuffling, confused glances. I caught Julia's eye across the table. She subtly shook her head, warning me not to make a scene. Throughout the appetizer course, Vanessa dominated the conversation. She just got promoted to marketing director at her dad's company, a position everyone knew was created just for her. "It's just so rewarding to be recognized for hard work," she said, looking pointedly at me. "Not everyone understands the dedication it takes to succeed in the corporate world. Some people choose easier, more creative paths, which is fine too, I suppose." My dad, always the diplomat, tried to include me. "Gabriella just completed a major branding project for that new tech startup. What was it called again, sweetheart?" Before I could answer, Vanessa cut in. "Oh, David, speaking of technology, did I tell you about the new partnership I negotiated with Tesla? Daddy says it's the biggest deal our company has ever made." The conversation continued like this, Vanessa interrupting, redirecting, subtly undermining everyone, especially me. I focused on the details, ensuring the service ran smoothly, quietly conferring with waiters about timing and dietary needs. It was during one of these moments, returning to my seat from speaking with the head waiter, that I noticed something odd. Vanessa had left the table briefly, claiming she needed to freshen up. As she returned, I saw her reach into her oversized designer handbag and carefully tuck something into an inner pocket. From my angle, I caught a glimpse of what looked like a second wallet, different from the red designer one I'd seen her use earlier when she'd made a show of tipping the coat check. My first thought was maybe an old wallet, but the furtive way she glanced around screamed suspicion. Over the years, I'd learned Vanessa's tell. A slight tightening around her eyes, her plotting face. I saw it now, and a chill ran down my spine. For a second, I considered confronting her. But this was my parents' night. Any accusation would sound paranoid. And a small, defiant voice inside me whispered, "Sometimes the best response to a trap is to let it be sprung, but on your own terms." So I watched. I waited, maintaining a pleasant expression while my mind raced. I noticed that after returning, Vanessa positioned her large handbag on the floor between her chair and mine, despite there being a perfectly good handbag hook under her table. Deliberate. The bag was notably within reach of my chair. Throughout the main course, I engaged with other guests but kept a peripheral awareness of that bag. I saw her check it several times, ostensibly for her phone or a tissue, always with that calculating look. Whatever game she was playing, she was staging it carefully. And for the first time in our long twisted history, I felt one step ahead of her. The tension in the private dining room escalated during the main course. This was supposed to be a celebration of my parents' love story, but it felt like navigating a conversational minefield. Uncle Robert, bless his heart, who never understood reading a room, brought up the family cabin. "So, David, have you decided who gets the cabin in the will? Not to be morbid on your anniversary, but I was talking to my financial advisor." A heavy silence fell. The cabin, a source of countless happy memories for Eric, Julia, and me, was also a source of tension. Vanessa had made it clear she wanted to renovate it into a proper lake house and claim it. "We haven't made any final decisions," my dad said, looking uncomfortable. "That's not really dinner conversation, Robert." But Vanessa saw her opening. "Well, since it came up, Eric and I have actually been discussing some wonderful ideas for modernizing the cabin. It needs substantial work, and we would be willing to invest in those renovations if, well, you know." She smiled sweetly. "It would be such a special place for Lucy to grow up visiting, just like Eric did." The implication was crystal clear. It should go to them because they had a child. A familiar tightness squeezed my chest. "The cabin is perfect as it is," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Its rustic charm and family history are the whole point. Modernizing it would erase what makes it special." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. That is such a typical response from someone resistant to positive change. "The cabin has plumbing from the 1960s, Gabriella. Surely even you can see that needs updating at minimum. There's a difference between necessary updates and completely changing the character of a place." I shot back. My mother, sensing the brewing storm, quickly changed the subject to Julia's recent promotion. But Vanessa wasn't done stirring the pot. "Speaking of careers," she interjected after Julia spoke for barely 30 seconds, "I heard that graphic design jobs are being rapidly replaced by artificial intelligence. Gabriella, are you concerned? It must be so stressful working in a dying field." All eyes turned to me. Classic Vanessa. "Actually," I replied, maintaining a calm smile, "human creativity and understanding of emotional resonance are exactly what AI cannot replicate. My client list is growing because companies recognize that connection. But thank you for your concern about my career." The conversation bounced between my parents' loving memories and Vanessa's pointed barbs, mostly directed at me. By the time dessert was about to be served, I was emotionally drained. "Excuse me for a moment," I said, standing up. "I need to check with the kitchen about the anniversary cake." In truth, I just needed a moment of peace away from her calculating gaze. I slipped out to the restaurant's small, empty outdoor patio. Taking a deep breath, I leaned against the stone balustrade, looking up at the few visible stars. In that quiet moment, I considered my options. Continue the pattern of the last 6 years? Deflect? Minimize conflict for harmony? Or finally call her out publicly? Or a middle path? One that protected my dignity without ruining my parents' night. And then I remembered the second wallet, her furtive actions. Whatever she was planning, it was meant to unfold tonight. The thought sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the evening breeze. After about 5 minutes, I knew I had to return. As I walked back, I saw Giovanni speaking with a waiter, gesturing toward our private room. He caught my eye and gave me a quick, reassuring nod. I'd explained the family dynamics during planning, and he'd promised to help. That small gesture solidified my resolve. I returned to find dessert being served, tiramisu, my mother's favorite. As I sat down, I noticed the shift immediately. Vanessa was sitting straighter, an almost imperceptible smile playing at her lips. Eric looked tense beside her, staring down at his dessert as if it held all the answers. My father was in the middle of a story about their honeymoon, but Vanessa was barely pretending to listen, her eyes flicking between me and her handbag, still positioned between our chairs. I had just taken my first bite of tiramisu when Vanessa suddenly gasped loudly, cutting my father off mid-sentence. "My wallet!" she exclaimed, her hand flying to her chest in an exaggerated gesture of distress. "I cannot find my wallet." The entire table went silent. Every head turned. "Are you sure you brought it?" my mother asked, concerned. "Did you check your coat?" "Of course I brought it," Vanessa snapped, then quickly smoothed her features into a mask of worry. "I had it right here. I paid the coat check with it. Someone must have taken it." She began looking frantically, peering under the table, asking others to check near their seats. I noticed she was careful to direct everyone's attention away from her own handbag. where I suspected the missing wallet was still safely hidden. Perhaps you left it in the restroom, Helen suggested. No, Vanessa insisted, her voice rising dramatically. It was right here in my bag. It has all my credit cards, my driver's license, even pictures of Lucy that cannot be replaced. As the search expanded and guests began standing up, I saw Vanessa's eyes dart toward me, gauging my reaction. I maintained a neutral expression, even helping to look around my area of the table, even as I felt the trap beginning to close. Wait, Vanessa said suddenly, her voice dropping to a theatrical hush. When did you leave the table earlier, Gabriella? And where exactly did you go? The question hung in the air like a thundercloud. Some looked confused, not immediately getting the implication. But I knew exactly what she was doing. I went to the patio for some fresh air, I replied evenly. And then I spoke with Giovanni about the cake. Why do you ask? Vanessa's eyes narrowed, and I saw the satisfaction in them that told me I had walked right into her script. Isn't it strange, she said slowly, that my wallet disappears right when you leave the table? And you were gone for quite some time, weren't you? The atmosphere shifted instantly. I could feel the uncomfortable tension as guests began to realize what she was suggesting. My mother looked stricken, my father confused and distressed. Julia was halfway out of her seat, fury etched on her face, but I caught her eye and subtly shook my head. This was between Vanessa and me. Are you suggesting I took your wallet? I asked, keeping my voice steady. That's a serious accusation, Vanessa. She didn't respond directly, instead turning to the table at large. Has anyone seen my wallet? It's red leather Prada with a gold clasp, very distinctive and obviously valuable. No one had, of course, because I was increasingly certain it was exactly where Vanessa had hidden it, waiting for her dramatic reveal. The private dining room had fallen completely silent. The waitstaff, sensing the tension, had discreetly withdrawn. Even the soft Italian music seemed to have dimmed. Vanessa stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. A sound that cut through the silence like a knife. Every eye was on her as she drew herself up to her full height, her expression transforming from worried search to righteous anger. You, she said, pointing directly at me, her voice rising to a near shout. You stole my wallet, you filthy thief. The accusation hung in the air, so outrageous, so unexpected, that for a moment no one reacted. My father was the first to recover. Now, Vanessa, he began, his principal's voice making a rare appearance. That is a very serious allegation to make without any evidence. But Vanessa wasn't to be deterred. She was fully committed to her performance. Her face flushed with what appeared to others as genuine outrage. I have suspected for years that things go missing when Gabriella is around, she continued. A pair of earrings from our guest bathroom, money from Eric's wallet, even Lucy's birthday gift card last year. I never said anything because I wanted to keep the peace, but this is too much. I felt as if I had been physically struck. Not only was she accusing me of theft tonight, but retroactively blaming me for alleged past thefts I'd never even heard of until that moment. I glanced at Eric, expecting him to defend me, but he was staring at the tablecloth, his face unreadable. That is absolutely not true, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. I have never taken anything that does not belong to me. Not tonight and not ever. My denial only fueled her performance. She turned to the table at large, her expression now one of sad vindication. You see how she lies? Always so perfect, so innocent. Gabriella, the graphic designer. Gabriella, the devoted daughter. Gabriella, who everyone loves. But I know what she really is. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some looked confused, others embarrassed. My mother had tears in her eyes, and my father looked older than I had ever seen him, lines deepened by distress. A complex mixture of emotions churned inside me. Humiliation burned. Anger pulsed in my temples at the injustice. But beneath it all, a strange calm was forming. I knew what was coming. I'd seen the setup, recognized the trap. While part of me wanted to leap up and scream the truth, a stronger part counseled patience. Let her play out her hand completely. I do not appreciate being called a thief or a liar, I said, keeping my voice low and controlled. Especially not at our parents' anniversary celebration. Vanessa's eyes gleamed with triumph. This was her moment. And then she made her move, the one I had been waiting for. "Well, if you're so innocent," she said with a smirk, "you won't mind if we check your things." Before I could respond, she reached down toward my feet, where my small clutch purse sat. Julia piped up sharply. "That's hardly large enough to hide a wallet." "No," Vanessa agreed, straightening up with a predatory smile. "But this is." She reached for the large tote bag that had been sitting between our chairs, the one I knew belonged to her, but that she now implied was mine. "That's not my bag," I said calmly. "Oh." Vanessa raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Then whose is it?" "It's been sitting right next to you all evening." Before I could respond, she made a show of opening the tote bag and dramatically reaching inside. The look of satisfaction on her face as her hand closed around what she was seeking made my stomach churn, even though I had anticipated this exact moment. "Well, well, well," she purred, her voice dripping with mock surprise as she triumphantly pulled out her red Prada wallet. "What do we have here?" "My wallet. In your bag." "See, I knew it was you." The collective gasp from around the table was audible. My mother covered her mouth, eyes wide with shock. My father looked stricken, torn between believing his daughter and the seemingly irrefutable evidence. "Gabriella." Eric finally spoke, his voice a mixture of confusion and disappointment. "How could you?" That hurt more than anything else, the immediate assumption of my guilt from my own brother. 6 years of Vanessa's influence had eroded his faith in me completely. He didn't even question this absurd scenario. The triumph in Vanessa's eyes was unmistakable. She had orchestrated her moment perfectly. She thought she had finally won. The shocked silence stretched into eternity. Everyone stared at the wallet, then at me. The perfect anniversary celebration had derailed spectacularly, and I was the apparent villain. And then I did the last thing anyone expected. I laughed. It started as a small chuckle, then swelled into full genuine laughter I couldn't have suppressed if I tried. The sheer absurdity of it, the elaborate trap, the fact that she thought she'd finally outmaneuvered me. It was hilarious in that moment of tension. My laughter shattered the frozen tableau. Vanessa's triumphant expression faltered, confusion and then anger replacing it. "What is wrong with you?" she demanded. "I just caught you red-handed stealing my wallet, and you're laughing." I took a deep breath, composing myself, though a smile still played on my lips. "I'm laughing, Vanessa, because that is not my bag. And we both know it." I pointed to the designer tote. "That's your bag. You placed it there deliberately, and you put your second wallet inside it earlier this evening." Her face paled slightly, but she rallied quickly. "What are you talking about? This is obviously your bag, and my wallet was inside it." "Actually," I said calmly, "if you look inside that bag, you'll find it contains things that belong to you, not me. Perhaps your makeup compact with your initials, or the specific brand of hand sanitizer you always carry, or maybe even the little notebook where you write down perceived slights from family members to bring up later." I had been observing Vanessa for years, noting these small details. The look of shock that flashed across her face told me I'd hit close to the mark. "You're trying to confuse everyone," Vanessa insisted, but her voice had lost conviction. "The fact remains that my wallet was in this bag next to your chair." "Yes," I agreed. "In your bag, which you carefully positioned to appear as if it might be mine, after I watched you place a second wallet inside it when you returned from the restroom earlier." Gasps and murmurs spread around the table as the implications sank in. My mother's expression shifted from distress to confusion, my father's from disappointment to careful consideration. "That's absurd." Vanessa scoffed, panic entering her voice now. "Why would I carry 2 wallets?" "An excellent question," I replied. "One that I asked myself when I saw you tuck something that looked remarkably like a wallet into that bag earlier. At first, I thought perhaps you had found an old wallet in your purse. But then I noticed how carefully you positioned the bag between our chairs, and how you kept glancing at me throughout dinner with that calculating look you get when you're planning something." I turned to address the table at large. What Vanessa didn't realize is that I've spent 6 years studying her methods. I know when she's setting up a situation. I've just never had proof before. "This is ridiculous," Vanessa spluttered. "You're making up stories to cover your theft." "Actually," I said, "there's a way to settle this definitively." I turned toward the back of the room where Giovanni had been quietly observing. "Giovanni." Would you mind sharing what we discussed during the planning for tonight's event? Giovanni stepped forward, his professional demeanor tinged with discomfort. When Miss Williams was organizing this celebration, she asked about our security measures. I informed her that after a theft last year, we installed discrete security cameras in all our private dining rooms. They are primarily for the protection of our guests' belongings, but they record continuously. The color drained from Vanessa's face so rapidly I thought she might faint. You knew, she whispered, staring at me. You knew there were cameras and you let me? I knew there were cameras, I confirmed. What I didn't know was exactly what you were planning. But when I saw you hiding something in that bag, I suspected it might be something like this. I just didn't think you'd go quite so far as to publicly accuse me of theft. Eric had been listening with growing horror. Now he stood abruptly. Giovanni, can we see this security footage right now? Giovanni nodded. Of course, we can access it in my office immediately. I don't think that's necessary, Vanessa said quickly, her voice high and tight. This has gotten out of hand. It was obviously just a misunderstanding. But Eric was already moving toward Giovanni, his expression grim. I want to see the footage now. I remained seated as Eric, my father, and Giovanni left the room. The atmosphere they left behind was thick with tension. Vanessa remained standing, her hands gripping the back of her chair, knuckles white. My mother looked between us, her expression unreadable. Julia had a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The minutes stretched on interminably. No one spoke. Guests fidgeted uncomfortably. Finally, the door opened and Eric returned. His face was set in hard lines I had never seen before, his eyes cold as they fixed on his wife. The cameras show everything, he said, his voice flat. They show Vanessa taking a wallet from her purse, placing it in the tote bag, and positioning the bag between the chairs. They show her checking repeatedly to make sure Gabriella hadn't noticed. And they clearly show her removing the wallet during her dramatic accusation. Every eye in the room turned to Vanessa, whose face now showed genuine fear. Eric, she began, I can explain. Don't, he cut her off, his voice sharp as a blade. Just don't. We'll discuss this at home. The silence that followed was deafening. I had waited years for this moment of vindication, for someone in my family to finally see Vanessa for who she truly was. But now that it had arrived, I felt no triumph, only a profound sadness for my brother and niece. I stood up slowly, drawing all eyes to me. Mom, Dad, I said gently. I'm so sorry that this happened during your celebration. This evening was supposed to be about your 40 years of love and commitment, not about any of this. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but they were different now. Oh, Gabriella, she said. We're the ones who should be sorry. We should have seen what was happening. I moved around the table to embrace her. As I did, I felt the weight of years of silent suffering begin to lift. Whatever happened next, the truth was finally out. The remainder of the dinner felt strange, subdued. Vanessa sat rigid, barely touching her dessert. Eric maintained a cold silence beside her. Lucy, sensing the tension, grew fussy until Julia quietly took her outside. My parents valiantly tried to salvage the celebration, but the emotional undercurrent was impossible to ignore. As the evening drew to a close, guests departed with a new awareness in their eyes. Some offered quiet apologies for having doubted me. Others simply squeezed my hand. Helen, my mother's best friend, pulled me into a fierce hug. I always knew that woman was trouble, she whispered. Good for you for standing your ground. My father looked shell-shocked. As he helped my mother with her coat, I saw him place a protective hand on her back, as if the evening had reminded him of the preciousness and fragility of family bonds. When only immediate family remained, my father finally spoke directly. I owe you an apology, Gabriella, he said, his voice heavy with regret. We've seen the tension for years, but we told ourselves it was normal in-law dynamics. We never imagined it went this deep. My mother nodded, tears welling again. We should have protected you better. We were so focused on keeping the peace that we didn't see who was really disturbing it. It's not your fault, I assured them. Vanessa is extremely skilled at presenting one face to some people and another to others. And I never wanted to force anyone to take sides. Eric, who had been standing silently by the door, waiting for Vanessa to return from the restroom, now approached me. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Alone if that's okay." We stepped out onto the same patio where I had collected myself earlier. The night had grown cooler, and I wrapped my arms around myself. Eric looked out at the city lights for a long moment before speaking. "I don't even know where to begin," he finally said. "I feel like the world's biggest fool." "You're not a fool," I said gently. "You're someone who wanted to believe the best about the person you love. There's nothing foolish about that." He shook his head sharply. "Stop being so understanding. I don't deserve it. For years I've dismissed your feelings, defended her behavior, even accused you of being jealous or difficult. And all this time," his voice cracked, "all this time she was deliberately trying to hurt you, to drive a wedge between us. I had imagined this moment of validation countless times. But now, there was no satisfaction in my brother's pain. What are you going to do?" I asked quietly. Eric ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking exhausted. "I don't know. I need to think about Lucy, about what's best for her. But I know I can't just pretend this didn't happen. What Vanessa did tonight, it wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was calculated, cruel. It makes me wonder what else she's capable of." Before I could respond, the door to the patio opened, and Vanessa emerged. Her makeup had been freshly applied, but it couldn't hide the redness around her eyes or the tight, defensive set of her mouth. "The car is waiting," she said to Eric, her voice brittle. "Lucy is tired." Eric looked at her for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression, a hardening I had never witnessed before. "Take Lucy home," he said. "I'll get a ride with my parents or Gabriella. We need some space tonight." Vanessa's composure slipped, revealing a flash of panic. "Eric, please. We need to talk about this." "Yes, we do," he agreed. "But not tonight. Tonight, I need to process what I saw on that security footage." For a moment, I thought she might argue further, but after a tense silence, she simply nodded stiffly and walked away. The sound of her heels clicking on the hardwood floors faded as she went to collect Lucy. After she left, Eric turned back to me. "I am so sorry, Gabs. I know those words aren't enough, but they're all I have right now." I reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "They're enough for tonight. The rest we can figure out as we go." When we returned inside, my parents and Julia were waiting. The five of us, our core family unit, without Vanessa's divisive presence, stood together in a moment of wordless reconnection. Then Julia broke the silence with her characteristic directness. "Well, that was the most dramatic anniversary dinner in history. Congratulations, Mom and Dad. You'll definitely remember this one." Surprisingly, this broke the tension. My father chuckled. My mother smiled through her tears. And even Eric managed a weak laugh. We gathered our things, thanked Giovanni profusely for his discretion and help, and made our way out into the night. As we stood on the sidewalk saying our goodbyes, my mother pulled me into a fierce hug. "I am so proud of how you handled yourself tonight," she whispered. "You showed grace under incredible pressure." "I learned from the best," I told her, holding her tight. As I drove home alone later, the events of the evening replayed in my mind. The satisfaction of finally having the truth exposed was tempered by concern for my brother and niece. Family dynamics were complicated, and I knew tonight's revelations would have far-reaching consequences. But for the first time in 6 years, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The constant need to defend myself, to question my own perceptions, to walk on eggshells around Vanessa. All of it was shifting. The truth had a power of its own, and once revealed, it could not be unseen. When I reached my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and poured myself a small glass of wine. Sitting by the window overlooking the city, I raised the glass in a silent toast to my parents, 40 years of marriage, to truth, and to the uncertain but hopeful future of our family. In the weeks that followed, our family entered a painful but necessary transformation. The immediate aftermath was exactly as difficult as I'd anticipated. Eric moved into my parents' guest room, explaining to Lucy that Daddy needed to help Grandpa with some projects. It was a flimsy excuse, but it provided a gentle buffer for Lucy, while the adults sorted through the debris of Vanessa's deception. Vanessa, for her part, cycled through strategies, First, tearful apologies and claims of stress-induced breakdown, then minimizing her actions as a misguided prank. When those failed, she resorted to what I suspected was her true nature: cold calculation. She hired an expensive divorce attorney and threatened to limit Eric's access to Lucy. That, ironically, backfired spectacularly. The security footage Giovanni preserved provided compelling evidence of Vanessa's deliberate attempt to frame me. When Eric's attorney suggested this demonstrated a pattern of manipulative behavior relevant to custody considerations, Vanessa's aggressive stance softened considerably. Within 3 months, Eric had filed for divorce and moved into his own apartment, establishing a tentative co-parenting arrangement with Lucy. The transition was hardest on Lucy. "Did Mommy do something bad?" she asked me one day at the zoo. Caught me off guard. "Grown-ups sometimes make mistakes in how they treat each other, sweetie," I carefully explained. "Your mom and dad are working through some grown-up problems, but they both love you very much. That will never change." She seemed to consider it, then nodded with the simple acceptance children often show for complex situations. "Daddy's sad a lot now," she observed, "but he smiles more when you visit." My relationship with my parents also evolved. My father took it as a personal failure. "I should have seen what was happening," he told me. "I've observed students for 35 years, but I missed what was right in front of me." "Dad," I reminded him gently, "Vanessa fooled a lot of people for a long time. That was her specialty." My mother, ever the nurturer, focused on healing our family bonds. She instituted weekly family dinners minus Vanessa, where we gradually relearned how to communicate openly. These gatherings were awkward at first, but over time, they became a sanctuary where authentic connection flourished again. Julia, of course, approached it with characteristic directness. "I've been waiting 6 years to say I told you so," she announced to Eric at one dinner. "But now that I can, it doesn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would." Her honesty broke the tension, and Eric actually laughed, perhaps his first genuine laugh since that night. As for me, the vindication I had longed for came with unexpected emotional complications. For years, I had channeled my frustration with Vanessa into my work, using graphic design projects as an outlet for the emotions I couldn't express. Now that the truth was known, I found myself at a creative crossroads. The initial weeks were a roller coaster. Relief, anger, guilt over Eric's pain, anxiety about the future. There were nights I lay awake replaying every interaction with Vanessa, seeing with new clarity the calculated nature of her behavior from the very beginning. I sought help from a therapist, Dr. Catherine Torres, who specialized in family dynamics. "What you experienced was a form of psychological abuse," she explained. "Having your perceptions repeatedly denied or dismissed can make you question your own reality. That's called gaslighting, and recovery takes time." With Dr. Torres's help, I began to rebuild my self-trust. I reconnected with friends who had drifted away, many of whom had sensed something was wrong, but hadn't known how to help. I focused on self-care, hiking along Lake Michigan, taking a pottery class, reading for pleasure again. Professionally, I channeled my renewed energy into my design business. I had always been good, but now I found a new level of confidence. I took risks, proposed bold concepts, and within 6 months, landed 2 major contracts and hired my first employee. The most profound healing, however, came through an unexpected channel. About 4 months after the anniversary dinner, I received a message from a woman named Sophia, Vanessa's former college roommate. She'd heard about the incident and reached out because, as she put it, "I've been where you are." Over coffee, Sophia shared her own experiences with Vanessa during university. The patterns were strikingly familiar. The careful cultivation of allies, the subtle undermining, the elaborate setups to make Sophia appear unstable or unreliable. The conversation was both validating and healing. "It took me years to trust my own perceptions again after living with her," Sophia confessed. "But you know what helped the most? Finding others who had been through similar experiences. Knowing I wasn't alone." Inspired, I started a small private support group. We met monthly, sharing stories and strategies for healing. Through helping others, I found my own path forward, transforming pain into purpose. As the 1-year anniversary of that fateful dinner approached, I reflected on everything that had changed. Eric was cautiously dating again. My parents seemed lighter, their relationship strengthened. Julia was considering a master's degree. And me? I had learned lessons that would shape the rest of my life. I learned the value of patience, of strategic thinking, of waiting for the right moment rather than reacting immediately. I learned that sometimes the most powerful response to manipulation is simply allowing the truth to reveal itself in its own time. Most importantly, I learned that standing in your truth, even when others doubt you, is not selfishness but self-preservation. For years I had silenced myself to keep the peace, believing harmony required my silence. Now I understood that real harmony can only exist where truth is honored and respected. The last time I saw Vanessa was at Lucy's 5th birthday party, a carefully orchestrated neutral event. We acknowledged each other with tight nods from across the room, but didn't speak. She wore a mask of cheerful politeness that never quite reached her eyes, and I wondered if she had already found new targets for her manipulations. But that was no longer my concern. I had reclaimed my voice, my family, and my power. The journey through pain had led to a place of authentic strength, and that, perhaps, is the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest growth comes through our deepest wounds. The very experiences designed to break us can become the foundation for building a more genuine, powerful version of ourselves. If we have the courage to face them honestly, and the wisdom to transform them into something meaningful. Have you ever experienced someone trying to manipulate a situation against you? How did you handle it? And what did you learn from the experience? Thank you for listening. Take care.